Today I'm going to be reviewing the Sennelier Extra Fine Gouache, doing some paint swatches, and then taking that paint for a test drive. Hi guys, this is Cheryl or TerraCotta. You know, before I left Korea I bought a little gift for myself, and that was a new set of Sennelier Gouache. I've been wanting Sennelier watercolor for a long time, but it's a little bit unaffordable. Anyway, they had a new product on the shelf. It was the Sennelier Gouache, and Sennelier is known for their vibrant colors. So I treated myself. It was on discount. I bought them, and now I'm here in the States and I'm going to be reviewing them. So my method is to swatch these colors out one color at a time. And I will be adding a little bit of white to see how many value variations I can get with that single color. And then I'll move on to the red and the yellow, and then I'll start blending those colors while adding the white to vary the values again. So my first color, of course, is going to be the Cerulean Blue Hue. This is a Series 3 paint. It's considered very light fast, and it is a blend of two pigments. One pigment is PB15, that means pigment blue 15, and the other is pigment white 6. Ironically, this paint has a white pigment in it, but I couldn't tell because this paint is extremely vibrant. It's rich, and even when I was trying to soften it with the white, I would add a little white and I didn't feel like it was a softer color, and I would add more white. It took a lot of white to make that pigment a little bit lighter. So I was surprised by how rich and vibrant this color is. It's gorgeous. The second paint I swatched out was the Ruby Red, and it is a Series 4, which means usually it is a little bit more difficult to manufacture, or it costs more to manufacture. Also, the Ruby Red is not so light fast. It's called moderately light fast, which means that over time the color could change, and that usually means it's going to brown. This is usually a result of being exposed to too much sunlight or the UV rays pulling the light out and the vibrancy, and then you get that color change. The problem with several reds and several pinks is that they are not so light fast. So this is just an FYI. This is a paint that I probably don't want in my palette because it's not considered extremely stable. And like the Cerulean Blue, the Ruby Red has two pigments in it. And one of them is PV19, a very well-known color. PV19 is purple violet, and it's known for creating the quin magenta or quin violet. It also has pigment red 48:2, which is a bluish red, and it's really good for transparency and glossy properties, which I find very ironic because this was not a glossy paint at all and not transparent. Actually, this is the one paint in the set that I had a little bit of a hesitation over, not because I knew at the time that it was not light fast or extremely light fast, but because I couldn't spread it easily on the paper when it was in its unblended form. So I tried to swatch out the Ruby Red and it didn't spread nicely. So I added a little bit more water, buttered it up, tried again, no, tried again, no, and finally as I was adding more and more white in that transition of color, it started spreading much more easily. So I think it seems to be like a dry paint that doesn't want to spread well by itself, but when it's in a blend, it is perfectly fine. It's really rich, it's very vibrant in a blend, but by itself, I found it flat, dull, and not really pleasant to work with. That's just my first impression. Okay, let's go to the Cadmium Yellow Light Hue, and this is a Series 3. It's a little bit complex to produce. It is quite light fast. It's more light fast than the Ruby Red, but less so than the Cerulean Blue Hue. Okay, so I'm going to continue with the yellow in a minute, but let's talk about how I did these blends. So right now I'm putting more yellow with a little bit of blue, and each time I'm going down, I'm adding a touch of white. And on this round, I am going to add more blue and less yellow, and again, adding a little bit of white as I go down. And do you see what I just did? I just switched the blue-red and the blue-yellow category. So I did a little arrow, and now I'm cleaning up my mistake, and I'm doing the blue-red now. More blue, less red. Each time I go down, I add a little bit of white, and I'm trying to keep that same value as I go down, but I'm finding that a little bit challenging because the blue is so intense in color. And now I'm adding more red and less blue plus the white. And I'm also beginning to look at my other paints and realizing that they are drying much darker than I expected. And so I'm going to have to adjust for this when I paint the Sandpiper. Okay, so now let's continue with talking about that yellow. It is also a combination of two pigments. It's a pigment yellow 1 and a pigment yellow 3. Which is not too bad because we have two yellows blending together. It's not going to be complicated when you're blending with another paint that has two pigments. For example, when you blend with the ruby red that has the PV19 and the PR, and both of those are a bluish red. So when you mix a bluish red with a yellow, which we are doing, then you're going to not get a warm orange, but you're going to have a desaturated orange. That means there's a little bit of blue browning that orange. And I was surprised by how kind of desaturated that orange was when I was blending it out. When I blended out the ruby red with the yellow, that means a higher percentage of ruby red than yellow. I loved the color. I felt like I was having this emotional high because I felt like I was painting rose petals. Like the center was really dark and rich, and each time I added white, I was just adding a lighter color of rose petal around that darker core. It was beautiful. And I loved it so much that I wanted to bring in those colors in the background of my Sandpiper painting, which we're going to see right now. But before we see that, I do want to say a very, very special thank you to Knut Fugel. He is the YouTuber of birds in Norway. I have him linked below. Check him out. He has given me permission to paint his birds on his site, and he's an awesome videographer and photographer. Just check him out. Trust me, you'll love his stuff. Okay, so we have two more paints to talk about. And the first one is the titanium white. Now the titanium white is a series 2. It's very light fast, and of course, being white, it's going to be opaque. But here is the drum roll. Dun, 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 dun. The titanium white is the only paint in this collection that is a single pigment. This is what we want. We prefer, or we should prefer, single pigment paints because when you mix a single pigment with another single pigment, you can predict the outcome. When you're mixing other two pigments plus two pigments, you're going to have a little bit of a mix and you might get a little bit of a muddy color. So the titanium is our only single pigment paint. That's awesome. Okay, so now for the last one, and that is the ivory black. It is a series 2, very light fast, but here's the hesitation. It is 4 pigments. 4. This is so unusual. I almost never see a paint that is 4 pigments. Sometimes 3, which I don't like. 2 I use sometimes, but I prefer to have a single pigment in my palette. But 4 to make a black? You can make a black with 2, choosing your transparent red iron oxide, which is a PR101, and a blue. In this black, there is a PR101. There is also a PY42, that's a yellow oxide. And then there are 2 black colors of pigment black 9, pigment black 11. We should be getting a really rich black, but This is called ivory black for the reason that it doesn't get dark black. It's more of a bone black or maybe a softer charcoal. It's kind of flat, it's kind of ugly, it's not an animated color. I felt like when I was using it I had to use a lot of blue or red to liven it up and put a little bit of spark into it. No, I didn't enjoy painting with that black. And you can see while I'm painting the Sandpiper and its atmosphere that the blue and the red is in conjunction with the black. We are now coming to the end of this painting and the question is hanging there, would I recommend these? And I know there's another question, would I buy them again? So let me answer the first question first. Would I recommend them? And I have to say yes, I did like them as a set. They are beautiful. They are rich colors, they blend well. I thoroughly enjoyed painting the Sandpiper and I found that the layering was nice. When I put one layer on top of another, if it was wet on top of wet, I got beautiful blends. If it was wet on top of dry, the dry layer wasn't disturbed that much, which could happen a lot in gouache because gouache does activate quite easily. So yeah, I was really happy with this set. Would I buy them again? I will say yes, but with two conditions. I will not buy them again as a set unless I get it on another huge discount. So I thoroughly enjoyed using the cerulean blue, the yellow, the titanium white, but I would toss out two of those colors. The colors are the ruby red and the ivory black, just because for the ruby red, if you're getting a color that is moderately light fast and is going to brown over time, you don't want that in your set. And also it's a color that didn't spread out very nicely when I was trying to use it in its neat form. I had to blend it with other colors to get a really nice color and a nice blend. So I didn't really enjoy painting with that ruby red at the very beginning until I started blending with it. As for the ivory black, anytime you have four colors in your pigment, or actually four pigments in your paint, you've got a problem, especially when this paint is looking flat and dull and it's not even a dark black. It's kind of a charcoal, a nondescript kind of charcoal, and I didn't really like that. I had to try to get it darker and richer by using the reds or the blues, and you probably saw that in the painting. So yes, I thoroughly enjoyed painting this. Would I buy them again? I would buy 3 paints again, and I would start buying open stock after that and choose my own pigments. And guys, I hope you gained some information about Sennelier Gouache or about how pigments blend. If you enjoy this kind of content or about these kind of paintings, just hit that like and subscribe, and I will see you again.